Well, good evening and welcome to About the Valley. And my guest tonight is Ann Roman. And Ann is here from Consumer Affairs. And if you're wondering what that's about, these are the people who handle problems that you might have with a product you bought or a service or anything of that nature, right?
Right. So we are actually the Consumer Assistance Office Metro West, and we get a grant from the Attorney General's office in order to help people who have problems with any kind of consumer purchase.
So you're not directly state employees then.
That's right.
You actually work on a grant.
Right. So we're an independent corporation. There are 19 other programs that do what we do, and every town in the state is covered by a local consumer program.
Oh, so how many offices are there throughout the state?
There are 20 altogether.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
And you're the one for this particular part of the state.
Right. So we cover Northbridge. Northbridge was added to our service area about 4 years ago.
Oh,
So
and you're out of Natick,
yes.
but you're easily available.
Right. Right. So you can call us on the phone. Our phone number is 508-651-8812. You can also go to our website and file a complaint there. And our website is caomw.org.
Yeah.
So what we do is it starts with a person filing a written complaint. We do ask that people have tried to work out the problem with the business first.
Mm-hmm.
And once the business has not done what they wanted, then they can contact
If
us.
they haven't responded or they haven't followed through, if you're not getting a result,
Right, right,
then they can contact you. Now, then they have to file a complaint.
yes.
Now, you don't have to file it online because I know there's people, even today, there's people that don't use computers.
Yes. So you can call us and we can send you a complaint form.
Uh-huh.
Or if it's something that's urgent or you need help, you can actually dictate the complaint over the phone.
Oh, so if it's an elderly person and they're unable to handle that, you can actually help them over the phone.
Yes. Yes, we're happy to do that.
Oh, now, what are some of the complaints you do get?
We get complaints on all different kinds of topics. So our big complaint categories are car purchases and then home improvement contracting, but we do landlord tenant. We can do credit issues. We can help people with problems with wireless service. Pretty much anything that you purchase for your own personal use. So say, for example, you were a landscaper and you had a truck that you used for your work. We couldn't help you with that because it's a business purpose.
Right.
And we can't help people with issues. We can do billing. Like say you have a healthcare issue that has to do with billing from a doctor. We can address the bill, but we can't address the quality of care, that kind of issue. We can't do any complaints against another government agency, against a charity. We could handle a complaint against a charity if it had to do with that you had bought something from them in a transaction, but say they weren't going to give you assistance. We couldn't help you with that kind of problem.
Right. And you probably get calls on that all the time.
We get a wide range of calls, and I love it when people call us. We also provide information to consumers. So I love it if people call me before they do something to ask for some advice. We can talk people through how to address an issue with a company before they, file a complaint. And we can also give them advice how to protect themselves, before they go in to do something.
Now, if someone called the Attorney General or the Governor's office or the state rep, would they be guided to you?
Some of the reps will guide them to us. If they call the Attorney General's office, there is the Consumer Advocacy and Response Division, and there's a hotline there. They will actually have people call us directly if they feel that that's going to be helpful, or they may have a complaint filed with them directly. If you call the Governor's office, that's a separate part of the government, so he may actually send the complaint to the Consumer Affairs
And then
Department.
but it'll finally end up with you.
It might. So Consumer Affairs and Business Regulation, our operations overlap a little bit.
I see.
So you can go to Consumer Affairs and Business Regulation, which is under the governor, and you can get arbitration for a car purchase. They do lemon law issues. They do have a home improvement warranty fund if you have a home improvement contractor issues. So they handle some things, and we work together. So we'll pass things back and forth. So we may try offering our dispute resolution services first with regard to a car purchase, and if that's unsuccessful, we may have you contact the Office of Consumer Affairs and Business Regulation.
Yeah, I don't know if people are aware that we have what's called a lemon law in Massachusetts.
Hmm.
And we talk a little about that because a lot of people buy cars.
Yes, yes, and especially for used cars. For new cars, people know about the lemon law, and that is that you have 3 repair attempts, or the car is in the shop for 15 days. And the 15 days, you have to remember, if you're waiting for parts, that doesn't count as part of the 15 days. But you have a year or 15,000 miles for that to occur, and if that occurs, you can send a demand for one final repair and then ask to return the car as a lemon. For a used car, there's really 3 different things that we apply. So there's a lemonade law, which says you have 7 days to have the car inspected. If
Right.
the car is rejected and the cost of repairs are more than 10% of the price of the car, you can choose to return the car. Or you can have the dealer repair it, and
Right.
that the dealer doesn't have to repair it. He can decide to give you your money back. You have to be very careful to make sure you have the car inspected in that 7-day period, though.
Well, aren't you're required to, I think, by law, to have your car inspected after so many days of purchase.
Right, right. So the 7 days gives you protection. If you miss that window, then you can have some problems. And if you want to return it under the lemonade law, you only have 14 days to return it to the dealer. Then there's the used vehicle warranty law, which is different, and that says depending on the mileage of the car, you have either a 30, 60, or 90-day warranty.
Oh, the higher the mileage, the lower the warranty.
Exactly. So, and under that law, the car still has 3 repair attempts, or if it's in the shop a total of 11 days or more, you can ask to return it for a refund.
I mean, I hate to think being out without your car for 11 days.
Yes,
Well, 50, a new car, 15 days. I mean, it's incomprehensible. You buy a car because you need a car and you need transportation.
right.
Now,
And that's,
are they required to give you a rental in the meantime?
they are not.
Oh, okay.
So, I think with new cars, a lot of times they do give you a loaner car.
They'll do it
but-
because they want to keep the business and as a courtesy.
Right, right.
But now, does that apply to individual sales on the lemonade law, on the inspection?
You mean with a private party sale?
Yeah, with a private party sale.
Okay, so that's different. A private party sale, the car still does need to pass inspection.
Okay, so you can't just sell your car and say, "Oh, see you later, pal. You bought it as is."
Right, exactly. But with a private party sale, if it does pass inspection and something else comes up, there is no used vehicle warranty law.
Right.
So you have recourse if you can prove that in the private party sale, that the seller knew something was wrong with the car, then you can go back and ask, make a case in court to try and get your money back. But you have to be able to prove not that the problem just existed, but that the seller knew about it, and that's
Right.
very
And that
difficult.
could be pretty tough to do.
Right.
And that you would have to do in small claims court.
Yes. Yes, depending on how much you spent on the car.
Right.
So small claims court right now goes up to $7,000. So if you spent more than that on the car, you might have to hire a lawyer and go to regular court.
Boy, yeah, that would be a nightmare. That's why it's really tough to make purchases, especially from individuals. Now, and now we're only talking about cars. If I went out and bought a computer from someone and came home with it, I have no recourse, have I? If it's an individual.
Oh, if you bought it from an individual?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know what recourse you would have. I mean, you could call them up and you could ask them,
Yeah, and that's about all
to
you
take
could
it
do.
back if it didn't work. But, then they would say, well, you did something to it perhaps, or,
Right.
you know.
But with a business,
Mhm.
if I have a problem with a purchase of any item, I can contact you if they're not responding.
Right.
Now, have you had situations though where you had a problem like that, you went to the business and found out that they went out of business?
That does happen sometimes. And if a business is going bankrupt too, the only thing you can do is get on the bankruptcy filing. So,
And then good luck.
yes, exactly. And we're not the Attorney General's office, we're not lawyers, we don't have any magic about how we find companies, but we do, if it's an incorporated business, we can check with the Secretary of State, sometimes we can find the owner of the business, and even if they have gone out of business, we can contact the owner and see if we can work something out
Right.
after the fact.
Do you think sometimes when they get a call from you that they feel a little bit more willing to negotiate because now they're feeling that the state's involved?
Yes, and we make it clear that we are not the Attorney General's office, but when you file the complaint is a public record, and I do report back to the Attorney General's office everything that happens in this dispute resolution process.
So that it's recorded with them now. They have a record of it.
Exactly, and they keep it on file for 6 years, and this way they can look and see, okay, are we hearing the same kind of complaint about this business over and over again? Is it affecting a lot of people? Maybe we do need to investigate these businesses.
And is that stuff available? If someone went to the Attorney General's website, they could find that on a particular company. His company's got a lot of complaints. I know if I do business with them, right?
Right. You can go to mass.gov and you can go to the open data sets and you can see how many complaints are filed against a business. And I always remind people, everyone is free to complain. We don't know what happened. We don't know the business's side of the story until after we've spoken to them.
Right.
So just because somebody complained doesn't mean
Yeah, it
it's a
could
valid
be.
complaint.
Yeah, it could be they did something wrong.
Exactly. Or there was a misunderstanding,
Yeah.
or someone, I know a lot of people believe you have 3 days to cancel a car purchase contract, and
Right.
you don't.
Oh.
So people can go ahead and complain, I bought this car, I can't afford it, I want to exercise my right to cancel the contract, and I'm the one who has to tell them, I'm sorry, you don't have that right.
And that include a new car?
Yes,
So.
yes, when you sign
Yeah,
that
'cause
contract.
that is a thing that I've heard in the past. So that's an erroneous information that's out there.
There are a lot of people, we have a quiz that we do sometimes when we go talk to groups, and that's the one question people get wrong. So many people believe you have a 3-day right to cancel a health club membership, a refinance, any contract that's signed away from somebody's primary place of business, a lot of home improvement contracts, timeshare contracts, but every other contract, when you sign it, you need to be very careful that you've read it, that you understand it, and you really believe you're going to follow through with it because it's binding as soon as you sign it.
Once that signature's on there. Yeah, yeah. People assume that because, like you say, with timeshares, with loans, with any kind of loan, you have a 3-day waiting. That's why they won't give you the money right away.
Well, it's with refinancing.
With refinancing.
So if you take out the original mortgage, usually the process is spread out long enough that
Right.
you don't have that 3-day window. But for
No.
refinancing, it's true.
Oh, okay. Yeah, or if you take a second mortgage, something like that,
Yes.
you got a 3-day. That's why they don't give you the money right away.
Yes,
you
so-
you have to wait it out, and
In case you change your mind.
yeah, and which makes sense because someone could, at the time, doing something on a whim and then find out they don't really want to do that, or they can't make the payments.
Right. And a lot of times people, especially if you're buying a car, you're looking at this beautiful car and you like it, and they tell you the monthly payment, and if you don't sit down and think about, well, how much more is it going to cost me for insurance?
Well, insurance, excise tax.
Right, adding all those things in,
Yeah.
and people calm down and they go home and they think about it and they think, gee, I really can't afford this.
How about car leases? That can be you get a lot of complaints about car leases?
We do get some, and we get a lot of complaints from people who turn in their car at the end of the lease.
Yes.
And they think everything's fine, and then several months later, they get a bill saying you owe me $800 for excessive wear and tear.
They don't tell them right away.
Not necessarily. So depending on who does the inspection of the car, if the place where you turn it in, that's not the place where they do the inspection for the wear and tear, then you can be surprised by a big bill later.
Well, that's something that if you do lease, what you should do is find out, you're going to tell me 3 months down the line that I'm going to owe you money.
Right.
And, look, I would need to know now because what a thing to get hit with.
Well, and lease, again, is another one of those documents. They're very complicated, and the best thing to do is actually take it home, read it through, make sure you understand all of it, because it's your job. It's their job to disclose all the conditions, and it's your job to understand them and make sure you've asked the questions.
Well, I don't know if people realize when you do lease, you're still going to pay sales tax.
Yes.
And some leases will incorporate it into the lease price, the monthly lease, and others, you're going to come up with a check up front.
Right, and it usually says in the terms of the lease which way it goes
But
and
these
who's
are things
paying
you
for
should
what.
know when you go in and not be surprised that once you sign it, they say, okay, now you get to, you got to go to the registry and give them a check for $1,000. What?
Right, right.
Or the fact that I know the dealers now have, well, not, the manufacturers are actually the ones doing it, is they promote the lease. But they have what they call that low mileage lease. And it sounds like, oh, you can lease this beautiful car for $199 a month.
Yeah.
But then you find out if you drive it over 6,000 miles a year, you're going to pay mileage.
Right.
And so these are things you really need to know before you walk in the door.
And you really need to calculate them out, and you need to know your
Yeah.
own habits too,
Yeah,
because there's no one right answer for everybody. Maybe you only drive 5,000 miles a year, so this is a great deal
Right.
for you. But if you drive 30,000 miles a year, it's not a very good deal.
but then keep in mind, if I decide that that's this summer, I think I'm going to take a vacation and drive across the country. You know, that's going to affect your mileage.
Yes, and you have to plan it out. And we always tell people, try and bring somebody with you when you're going to talk about these things. Somebody who can interrupt the flow of the conversation and slow things down, because the salespeople, even if they don't intend to mislead you, they know exactly what they're talking about.
Yes.
And most of us don't buy or lease a car every day. And so
Right.
we're not really familiar with the terms. And taking the time to sit down and really think about things, there's a reason why they advertise cars, you know, with a lease at a low monthly rate, because they know most people won't sit down and figure all those things out. So psychologically,
All
you
the
hear
added
this low
fee- yeah.
number and you say, that's great, I want that, that's going to be wonderful. And it's not till later when you realize you didn't make a good deal.
Oh, yeah, I know. I mean, I remember years ago when you bought a car, in some cases, the heater was an option.
Oh my goodness.
I'm talking way back in the 50s and 60s. That was a fact.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, radios, we buy cars today. I mean, the air conditioning, I think, is standard today. But that wasn't always true. Well, now what they do is when you go in, if you want to upgrade it a little bit, add to price and add to the price. And the first thing you know, that lease that they were advertising for $100 a month or $190, that suddenly jumps way up.
Right, and all of that is also dependent on how creditworthy you are
Yes.
also. So that number, they don't say, you know, when they're advertising it, there's little asterisks, but, you know, some of it is dependent on what your credit score is and everything else. So that may not, just because they advertise it doesn't mean it's available for you.
Are you able to people sometimes get problem with their credit score because they might have a dispute with a company.
Mhm.
It happened to me a long time ago. I had ordered some doors from Sears, and they came in, and they were the wrong color. And I told her, I'm not taking these doors, they're the wrong color. Oh, and I pulled out the form, I said, here's what I ordered black, you sent me white. Oh, you still got to take, I said, no, I'm not taking them, and I wouldn't take them. Well, they turned around and said I didn't pay for them. I didn't take them, but they were going to charge my card. And I said, you can't charge me, I'm not taking the doors. I want the right ones. A year later, I get a bad credit rating. And it's from Sears saying I didn't pay the bill.
Yeah.
I mean, do you have that happen?
We have people complain about that, and what they do, you know, first they have to have called Sears and asked them to correct what's on
Yep.
the credit report. And if they don't have success with that, they can file the complaint, and we will go ahead and contact Sears. What happens is they file the complaint. When it comes into the office, I review it, and I will contact the consumer and talk to them about it and get their permission to send a copy of the complaint out to Sears in that case.
Right.
And I send that with a letter from me saying what it is that you want. So you want your credit report corrected. And then what happens is a facilitator in my office would take the case, they would call you, talk to you about what happened, make sure they really understand your position, maybe get some documents from you, you know, showing that you ordered a black door and that you received a white door. And then the facilitator would call Sears and see what they could work out with them.
Oh, yeah, because like my case, I didn't know until almost a year later when I went for credit for something else, and it turns up.
Yes.
And then I had to write all kinds of letters explaining what happened, and oh my God.
And it's frustrating because at the time you're trying to use credit. So if you
Yes.
don't find out till you're applying for the mortgage,
Right.
you know, that this happened, it may
Yeah.
make you lose a house or a car that you wanted to purchase or something.
Exactly.
So we always encourage people to check their credit reports regularly anyway.
I mean, today it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
You can get Credit Karma. You just check it. I check mine all the time because you never know when something can
Do you
happen.
check your credit score or your credit report?
My credit score, but it also has, you can get the report. And I also, I signed, I got LifeLock, and I got a Bank of America
Oh, good.
thing that they, and if anybody, if I apply, I get a notice. Or if anybody tries to apply under my name, they will send out a notice. And I think today, these things are great, because you can get it on email, you can get it on your cell phone, and that, do you find that's a problem with people stealing people's credit?
People steal people's credit, and also, it's always valuable to check your credit report because you don't know what could be mixed in there.
Yes.
I had a consumer come in and talk to me, and when he was a victim of a scam, and so we checked his credit report, and it turned out somebody with a name very similar to his, their information was intermingled on the credit report. And luckily for him, this other person was a responsible person and paid their bills, and so we just had to get him off the credit report.
Right.
But he wasn't dragging down his
But he could have, if it
credit
was,
score.
yeah, if it was someone who had excessive credit or wasn't paying their bills, it could hurt
Exactly.
that person.
Exactly. So if you go to annualcreditreport.com, you can access all 3 credit bureaus. And it's worth looking at all 3 credit reports.
Is there a fee for that?
No. So you
Okay.
get 1 free report a year. If you have a dispute, you can get a second report for free until the dispute is resolved.
Oh,
So, say with your Sears example before, Sears promised to correct your credit report.
Right.
You could keep looking at your credit report until the time that Sears fixed it for free.
right.
If they knew a dispute was going on.
Yeah, now, I know, there's 3 major credit bureaus,
Yes,
and they have a lot of power.
they do.
In this
It's
type
scary.
of, in the type of economy we have, I mean, we have an economy that runs on credit.
Well, not only does the economy run on credit, but now people are using credit scores, with dating apps, and people are using
They
credit
use to get
scores
jobs.
to get a job. And so if your credit score is very low, you may not be able to get a job at the mall.
I know a lot of companies won't hire you if you got a low credit score, because you could be susceptible to stealing from them.
Yeah, and I think that really what companies are thinking is that you're not managing your credit, you don't care about your own personal finances,
Yeah.
so you're not going to be dependable. And that may not be a fair assumption.
No.
You don't know what's happened to a person. Maybe someone got sick and now they
Right.
couldn't pay their hospital bill, and after that things spiraled out of control. You don't have to be irresponsible if you
Someone
have a
could have
bad
lost
credit
their
score.
job, and because of it, couldn't make their bill payments.
Right, and it takes a while to recover. And it's also very wise to be careful, we've seen less of it. There were a lot of firms years ago advertising that they were going to repair your credit score. Well, your credit score gets repaired over time anyway. And so the thing to
Right.
do is really start acting responsibly, start trying to pay off as many things as you can, and just let it recover. Paying people thousands of dollars to fix your credit report, they really can't do it. That's
No, it's time, and you're better off to put the thousands of dollars into getting your credit, get yourself out of debt.
right, right. And we've had certainly heartbreaking complaints about people who go to debt consolidators, and so they're paying money into the debt
Yeah,
consolidator.
that's something I'd like to bring up. That's a very popular thing right now. They're all over the place.
Yes,
But it's very deceiving what they do, isn't it?
it can be.
Yeah.
So there are reputable companies, and then there are others that, they have you sign an agreement, you pay in a monthly fee, say maybe you're paying $300 a month, but the first $1,200 are payments of their fee. It's
Right.
not paying anything
Going
off.
to them.
And then what they're doing sometimes is there are companies that will actually ignore all your bills. So the credit card companies, or whoever you are owing money to, aren't being paid anything. They haven't been notified of anything. Then they'll save up the money when there's more and start to pay off one credit card. But before you know it, everybody's taking you to court and they haven't done you any good.
Right.
And again, if you read the fine print of the contracts, it's so frustrating for me, the number of things that are in terms and conditions and in these contracts, that they're hard to read, the print is small, and you should really be very wary. If you don't understand exactly what's there, the best idea is not to sign it, maybe bring it to somebody else who can look at it for you and with you and figure out whether it's a good thing to do.
Yeah, they advertise, you don't have to pay all that money back that you owe on those credit cards.
Right.
Well, that's not necessarily true, is it?
It isn't necessarily true, and it's also misleading when you're talking about credit scores.
Right.
Because there's a difference between paying your debt or settling your debt, and settling your debt means you paid less than what you owed,
Right.
and it also means that that's a hit on your credit score.
Yes.
So, and the businesses do have to report the data accurately. They can't say you paid in full if you didn't. So they're not
Right,
pulling
so,
your
yeah,
leg
so
or
you might be
playing any
negotiating
tricks.
out some of the money you owe, which is probably all interest,
Yes,
but
and late fees
and late fees and things like that. So it didn't cost them anything. They're just losing money that they would have collected from you. But then they also will send you a 1099 at the end of the year, right?
sometimes,
Yeah.
yes.
So now all of a sudden, let's say you diluted your debt by $10,000, you get a 1099. That adds $10,000 to your income
Right.
that you paid no taxes on all year. Now you might end up owing money
And you owe money to the IRS.
to the IRS,
And the IRS will never
and they never give up.
negotiate. I guess sometimes they will, but mostly,
Well,
they
that has
will
to be
paid.
negotiated too.
Right, and people should be aware of that,
Yes.
that they understand that before they go in.
Yeah, because these companies make it sound so good,
Yes,
but there's no easy way out.
no, there isn't. And again, it's all the details in the fine print that they tell you the high level, we can do this for you. Will they do it for you? It depends. And the more
probably-
reputable ones will maybe collect some money, but they'll be working with you on setting up a budget and how do you manage your payments and
Right.
how to consolidate all these things and, how to pay off the highest interest things first so that you can get everything under control.
I know, the thing is that you're probably better off to just negotiate yourself with the individual credit card companies.
It's best to try it first.
Yeah,
And I have found when we're contacting like debt collectors and things like that, what you ask them is, what information do you need from me to show that I can't pay this back? How do I prove this to you? How do I prove that when I tell you I can only pay you $50 a month, that you'll believe that? And how do we negotiate this? And if you start by offering them that kind of information, things move forward. I do admit that, debt collectors and some of the banks will speak differently to us because we're a third party
Right.
and where we are reporting back to the Attorney General's office.
Right.
That makes them a little bit more cautious about how they
They wanna be
respond to us.
cooperative.
Yes, yeah. But they don't bend over backwards. They don't
No.
necessarily just cave into whatever we ask.
well, that debt is still there, and that's job to get it. I mean, there's another thing too now. We saw a few years back, mortgage foreclosures. I mean, were numerous. Do you get involved with that at all?
There are other LCPs. We're a local consumer program that under this grant we have from the Attorney General's office, there are a couple of offices that actually handle mortgage issues. So we don't handle much of that because that's very specialized. But they
Yeah.
did set up a special
I know
office
there was
that
a
does that.
situation, I guess by law, you have to do certain notifications and signings and things like that, and they actually had Bank of America was actually having other people signing for them.
Robo
and-
signing, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and you got to be but there was so many of them going on, and you still see abandoned houses around,
Yeah.
and with the paper in the door.
And what I would say is everybody should make sure you keep keep all your paperwork, keep it together, keep very good records. Because that's what's very important,
Yes, you can't handle a complaint unless you have to have a lot of information.
Well, if we have the background when we go and talk to a bank and we can say, this page wasn't signed.
Yeah,
We did have a case years ago where there was a lien on a house. And because the paperwork wasn't correct, they took the lien off the house
oh,
through our program. And that was several, over $100,000
Wow.
was the lien. So if you can find the errors in the paperwork,
yeah.
sometimes you can make the argument and they'll fix things.
The law is so intricate, it's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
But, I mean, if you go for a mortgage, I mean, you're talking
Right, and one of the
a
things
binder.
and it's very frustrating because really you have to trust the lawyer you're dealing with.
Yes,
You know, and every time you have to trust somebody else to have your best interest at heart, you're vulnerable.
yes. Hopefully you get a good lawyer.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, a house is a transaction you cannot do without a lawyer.
Right. Well, some people do, but you're best to have the
Yeah.
protection of an attorney because it's so complicated anymore.
Yes.
And there's so much money at stake.
Oh, I
It
know.
can ruin you.
But now, hospital bills, there's certain type, they will forgive some bills, won't they? If you can show you're destitute.
Right. Right. But that's more, it's not really a consumer complaint, it's more of a charity kind of thing. If you contact them and say you can't pay, some doctors and hospitals will actually discount your bill if you can pay quickly. So it's always worth, if you have problems with insurance, it's always worth talking about those kinds of things
Right.
too, and seeing if you can get some kind of discount off the bill.
But you always you gotta try and attempt to pay anyway. And if you only pay them $10 a month, whatever,
Right. Well, the other thing is, and we've run into this with consumers who have financial problems, businesses frequently, if you have made a goodwill effort to try and pay, they're far more likely to make an accommodation for you later.
Right.
If you have ignored your bills and, you know, you think
worst thing you can do.
you're frustrated and you just don't know what to do, so you throw them under the bed and you think they'll go away, and if you just ignore it, it'll all go away. It doesn't work that way.
No, they never go away.
So, you know, sometimes even if you can only pay $5, if you send a note, this is the most I can pay now, and see, the only time you get into trouble with that is if you have to file for bankruptcy. Or, you know, like for debt collection, the debt collection window, they can only collect a debt in court for 6 years from your last payment. So if you are not going to be able to pay off a debt, you know, I always tell people don't make a partial payment. So say you owed someone $20,000 and you didn't pay for 3 years, and now the debt collector is contacting you and he says, oh, just pay something, just, you know, give us a little something.
Oh.
You don't want to.
That's why
Because
they
that's
do
going
that.
to start the clock all over again and let them be able to collect the debt in court for 6 years from the last payment. So, you know, if you owe something, if you can pay off the whole thing, if you agree you owe it, and you know, and that's what I tell people, be fair about it. Don't worry about their interest and penalties, but if you agree you owe something, you want to try and pay it back in a good faith way, but be careful about making that one extra payment, because they'll make it sound like, oh, you make the one payment and we're going to work with you. There's something in the back of their mind that's working.
Even if you give them $1, it's still a payment. and
It's still
so
a payment, and the clock starts all over again.
Yeah.
So the limit in court federally is 7 years, but in Massachusetts, it's only 6 years from the last payment.
Oh, and we go under Massachusetts law.
Right, right. And debt collectors have to be registered with the Division of Banks here. So now, if we have a debt collector that's just a debt collection company, and you called me about that, I might handle it, or I might refer you to the Division of Banks, which is part of the Office of Consumer Affairs that we were talking about before. Or if it's a law firm that's doing the debt collection, I could help you myself, because the Division
Now,
of
there's
Banks doesn't
certain
deal with that.
rules that these debt collectors have to adhere to as well, isn't there?
Yes, yes,
Can't call you they can't call you in certain hours.
right. They only can call you between 9 and 9, and they can't call you too often. If you go ahead and send them in writing, verbally you can tell them not to call you at all, and they have to honor that for a month. What you want to do is in writing tell them to contact you only, you know, in writing, and then they have to honor that for a year.
Oh.
And if you get a debt collection notice, you always want to respond to it. So if you got one and you said, this isn't me, I'm going to throw that under the bed again, you don't want to do that. You want to ask them to verify the debt right away, and they have to stop debt collection practices till they can verify the debt. And back, you know, in the crisis in 2008, what we were finding was there were a lot of debt collection companies that were trying to collect debts without being able to verify the debt. They had a spreadsheet from someone. They couldn't document exactly what account it was and how much you owed and all of that. So the first thing you want to do is challenge them. That's the first step to being able to stop the debt collection activities.
Yeah, I don't think people realize that these debt companies are purchasing that debt.
Yes.
They purchase like 50 cents on a dollar and sometimes even less.
lots of times even less, mostly
Yeah.
even less.
Yeah,
So there's a lot of room to negotiate with them
right,
because then they tack on fees too.
yes.
So, you know, you always want to negotiate with them, but you want to make them give you proof that they actually can verify the debt so that you can talk from there, because if they can't come up with that, they have to drop the issue.
Yeah,
And then-
you might have owed a credit card $1,000, we'll say. The debt company bought it for $100, but they're still trying to get the 1,000.
Right, they're trying to probably get 1,500 because
Yeah.
they want to be paid for their time too. So
Right.
there usually is a lot of room to negotiate. And then a lot of times if you can approach them and say, I'm going to give you a lump sum, they might take less as a lump sum than if you wanted a payment plan.
Right, because they're getting their money, and they made money because they bought it so cheap,
Exactly.
so they
So
don't
they're-
mind.
Right, and they'll throw everything at the wall to see what sticks. So several years ago, I got multiple calls from debt collectors. And it was someone's name who was similar to mine, but not exactly the
Oh.
same name.
Whoa,
And so they will contact people, and so that's why I say sometimes you could get a debt collection notice, they could send one looking for a different Ann Roman, and they could know that the Ann Roman they're looking for lives in Franklin and not where I live, but I'll still get the notice because they're hoping maybe it's the same person,
Yeah.
maybe I know them, you know.
they take a shot in the dark, and if it
Right.
hits, well, hey, great, we made it. You know?
Right, but they are allowed to assume, if you don't respond, they're allowed to assume that you're acknowledging that that's your debt. So that's why you want to be sure you respond to it. And consumers frequently say to me, I shouldn't have to do that. This wasn't my problem, you
It
know.
doesn't matter.
And you need to do it to protect yourself because the debt collectors do report to the credit bureaus.
Yeah, so now they have your social security number, or how do the credit bureau know it's you?
Well, that's an interesting question. So sometimes they just do it based on the name and address. And that's why, when I was talking before about reviewing your credit report, that's why erroneous things can get in your credit report. Because some things go on based on your social security number, but some is just your name and some is just your address.
And that's a terrible way to do that.
When you think of the power they have,
Yeah,
they should really have to verify everything that's on your
I mean,
report.
you could have someone with the same last name, identical, and maybe lived on the same street at one time.
Hmm.
Oh my God! I mean, and it could
Or
just-
you think of you know, a father and his son,
Yeah,
you know, senior and
yeah.
junior, and all of a sudden all of their information could be commingled.
yes,
And we've had complaints to that effect where we've had to contact the credit bureaus and work things out.
boy, you don't realize what it's like out there. I mean, you know, another thing I wanted to get into, and our police department has put signs up around town. These IRS phone calls. You familiar with those?
Yes,
Yeah,
The
you
scam
heard
calls.
about them.
right.
I tell people, IRS does not call you. They send letters.
Right. They may call you now. They actually have hired debt collection companies, but you will always get a letter first.
Yes.
And so that brings us to our favorite gripe
got
in
one
the
just the
office
other
about
day.
robocalls. And
I got an IRS call.
you did.
Yeah. And my wife gets all upset. I said, that's not the IRS.
Yeah.
Number one, and I don't owe them anything. Not until April 15th, and they'll get their check.
Yeah. But they are convincing, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
You know, and this, you have to call back right away or else we're going to
Well,
have
see-
to go to court. And
I use modern technology. I have an answering machine, and I have caller ID. And I never, rarely do I answer my landline. And that's what they call me. Because anybody who I know calls my cell phone. So I don't care.
well, now the robocalls are going to cell phones too.
Yes.
And what I tell people is, you know, let somebody start talking. Because with the robocalls, they're automatically dialed calls and they're usually from a computer, but they can also spoof numbers. So it can come up on your caller ID and say the IRS is calling, but it isn't the IRS.
Ah.
And they can impersonate them, they can do just the general area, or they could just use some random number and call you. And what they're finding is, and this is part of our education piece compared to our dispute resolution piece that we do, the FCC is collecting information on that. And what they're finding is these robocallers can tell if you even just answer the phone and hang up, they realize that somebody picked up the phone, and so then they'll call you more frequently. You also have to be nervous of if you even just say yes. They can tape that and they can use that as the permission for other robocalls or as the permission for other things.
And this is even if you have don't call.
The do not call, well, see, the do not call registry is effective for legitimate businesses.
Right, these
But
are not
people
legit.
who are criminals
Yep.
don't respect that anyway. And there is a function for your landline called Nomo Robo. You can go to nomorobo.com and sign up, and that will try and block robocalls to your landline. And there are applications for your cell phone also, but you have to pay for those to block the calls. And the heartbreaking things we deal with are people who have been scammed. And I have talked to people who have said to me, you know, I picked up the phone, I started talking to somebody, and I gave them the information.
Yeah.
The people who are perpetrating these scams are very manipulative
Yes.
and they're very cunning. So they'll say, oh, do you know who this is? And if you're waiting for somebody, maybe you'll supply a name. And they'll play off of whatever it is that you tell them back, and you don't even realize you're giving them information. So that's why we always say, please don't answer the phone. Let somebody start talking. You'll recognize if it's somebody you know. But
Well, I know that another scam is they'll call up and say that a relative or a friend is in trouble, and say that they know them, and they get the name from. So I don't know how they get their names.
yeah.
They need you to send them money in Veracruz or wherever.
Yeah, yeah. And so some of it, sometimes they're on Facebook, and they can look there, and they can see
Find
the
out who your
connections,
friends are
and
on
they can
Facebook.
find out an awful lot about you from what's posted there. And a big warning flag for everybody should be when they're asking for these alternate forms of payment. So everyone that gets scammed is buying these different gift cards and
Yep.
reading gift card numbers, you know, because years ago they used Western Union.
Yes.
Then they clamped down on Western Union, and Western Union now has a 48-hour waiting period, so that's no good.
Oh.
So they'll call you up and they'll say, well, you know, I need the money to get out of jail, you know, we're in the hospital over in Europe someplace, and we need the money for the operation, whatever, and they'll have you buy the gift cards, read them, the numbers off the gift cards and the PIN number off the gift cards, and they sell those gift cards on the internet. And that's how they make
So
their
they don't
money.
even have to get the gift card. You just give them the
Right.
PIN number off the gift card, and
Right.
they're all
And this
set.
all happens, so you don't even know who you're dealing with. You could be
Right.
talking to somebody in Russia, you could be talking to somebody in Jamaica, you could be talking to
Yeah,
somebody
these are from
in Africa.
overseas.
Oh, yes, yes.
I
So you
know,
could be
it's
talking
amazing.
to somebody anywhere, and they never set foot in this country, and they sell things on the internet, and you can't even trace who sold what to who and try and recover your money. And so people have to remember we're all very emotional beings, so
Yeah.
they play off our compassion
Yeah.
and our fears, and so you
And
react.
Even your greed.
Yes,
That's
Yeah.
another.
the lottery scams too, you know, and the sweepstakes.
The email. My father was a prince in Kenya or something or other, and I need to get this money out. I get those emails
Yes.
all the time.
Yes.
And when I read it, it says, "Dearest Harry." Delete.
Yeah, some of the language, but people are told, you know, they want a sweepstakes,
Yes.
and you know
But you got to register, and you got to send me some money to
right,
register.
to pay the taxes.
To pay the taxes.
And oh, wait, good news, if you're foolish enough to send the money in the first place, there's good news, there's more money than we first expected, but there's more taxes, so send us some more. And,
Yeah.
you know, all of those things. Back in the mortgage crisis, the complaints we were hearing from people were that they were contacted by people who could bail them out and give them money. And so they would have to send money for an insurance policy for the loan. And they were desperate, so they would send it, and then they would find out, oh, we need a little bit more money. And it wasn't until they were asked for money the third or fourth time
Oh.
that they would realize they were had. You know, and those were heartbreaking for me because people would then give their social security number, their bank account number,
Yeah,
and then
now-
they had an identity theft problem
Yeah.
on top of everything else. So, you know,
I check my bank account every day, first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
I go online and I check. You never know when someone's going to scam your account.
right?
and get deductions that you don't expect. One reason I called you, I had a problem with that, but we got it straightened out. But the thing is, today there's so much scamming going on. I know in town, the reason the police put these signs out, they had an elderly person in town that actually sent $15,000 to someone,
Yes.
thinking it was the IRS. It took their life savings. I mean, it's unbelievable what, and these people have no conscience.
Yes. And do you know how it happened? Did they purchase gift cards and do it that
No,
way?
they
or
actually they sent them cash.
Sent them cash. Oh.
Yeah, they wired it to them. Now another thing that I find, my phone will ring and I look at the number and it'll say 234, which is the Northbridge Exchange. So, and being a town official on the Cable Advisory and Planning Board, well, maybe it's a citizen calling for about something. I stop answering because I pick it up and it's somebody else.
Yeah.
I say, why are they calling using that number?
Because that's just
They're-
what
they're
you said.
slamming 'em.
It's called neighborhooding. And
Yeah.
it's that spoofing thing where they say, oh, if I call Harry using the local exchange, he'll think it's somebody from town that he wants to talk to. He'll think it's safe, so he'll answer
And
the
you know
phone.
what? If you call the number, if you get home and you see this number on your machine, this number called, and you call them, I didn't call you. Well, you're on my
Right.
answering machine.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. They actually had somebody in the Attorney General's office got called in the middle of the night, and the phone number that came up was the Attorney General's
Oh.
phone number,
So they answered it, of course.
Yeah, well, that's actually a number that comes up as 00000. But you think that they do it to anybody. And the
Yeah.
idea that they would call you in the middle of the night is also
Yeah.
a sign that something's the matter.
Yeah, we got a call at 1 o'clock in the morning the other day. I said, who is calling? My wife answered the phone. I said, who's calling us at 1 o'clock? I don't know. They didn't say anything.
Yeah.
I wonder sometimes, too, if someone wants to burglarize your house, they call us if anyone's home.
Yeah, sometimes it's a wrong number too, and sometimes with the automatic dialers, if someone else somewhere else in the world picked up, it'll hang up on you because it sends all these tentacles out all at once, and the first person who answers the phone,
Oh.
I guess, loses.
Sometimes you pine for the 1800s when we didn't have all these electronic problems.
Well, all this technology is wonderful,
Yeah.
and we used it to find our way here today, but it
Yeah.
also has its downside too.
Yeah.
So you have to know how to protect yourself and be careful, what websites you're going to and look at all of that.
Yeah, now on phone calls, they can call for charities all day long, right?
Right. So you can have political calls,
Yeah.
any nonprofit can call, any polling call they
Yeah.
can make. They just can't be selling something to you.
Right. And
But for everybody else, you have to give them permission to call you. And if you do give them permission and you change your mind, everybody has to let you opt out now. So that's a change.
I'm on a no-call list, but my phone rings all day long. I hate sitting in my office. And I know what it is. They're calling for it's charities. Because once you give to one,
Yes. And we've had that come up too, that a charity can use multiple companies to try and do their fundraising.
yeah,
So sometimes you're talking to what you think is the charity and you're really talking to a fundraiser and you say,
Yes.
take me off your list. And they say, okay. And they do, but unless you really go back to the charity itself and get off all the lists, you'll still get calls.
that's another thing too. Now these charities use these companies. They're not even getting the money. They're only getting a percentage of it.
Right, right. And so you can go on the Attorney General's website. There is a section about charities, and it reports what percentage of the funds actually gets to the mission compared to the fundraisers.
Yeah, I mean.
And the
If-
Better Business Bureau also has, I think it's called charitynavigator.org, where you can check that before you make a donation.
No, that's another agency. But the Better Business Bureau is a private agency, and it's supported by membership.
Right.
So, is it really legit if you're getting good information out of them? If it's a member, are they going to say
Right.
that?
So the Better Business Bureau is a business organization.
Right.
And they try to do some consumer work because they're trying to police the business community. and make sure that it's a level playing field to make it a good environment for
Right.
all businesses is their goal. But when you go to their website, they don't necessarily research all those companies. It's really a matter of how many complaints have been filed against the company. So you can see.
What if the company's a member, though?
If the company's a member, they pay to be a member, and then the Better Business Bureau has more clout with them. So if they are leaving their customers unsatisfied and they're not resolving issues, you can have a mediation process through the Better Business Bureau, and they may
Oh,
actually
okay.
kick them out, because
Oh,
there's
okay.
a standard that they want the businesses that are
Yep.
members to meet.
Okay.
But how many businesses you deal with are actually members of the Better Business Bureau, that's another question.
Right.
And what we find is with the really bad businesses, all they do is they get a number of complaints against them, whether it's with the Better Business Bureau or with the Attorney General's office or with Yelp or wherever, and then they change their name.
Right.
And so they start fresh.
Yep.
And if you go to research them, you say, oh, look, there's no complaints. And if you knew that it's the same company under name A, B, and C,
Yeah.
you would know to avoid them.
Which is pretty easy to do today.
Yes.
You can actually do it online.
Right.
You start up a new business. Yeah, so then it's hard to trace back as to which company we're really talking about. Yeah, I
Right.
can understand doing that.
And that's a new thing that we're seeing too with people, maybe using some of these online sites to locate people who are going to perform services at their house. So, somebody may be on Craigslist, or they may be on House, or they may be on
Yep.
Angie's List, or not to pick at any of them, but they can be listed at all those places, and you may not know exactly who it is you're dealing with.
Yeah, isn't that a problem with Craigslist that they found? There's been problems. I mean, a murder took place using Craigslist. Remember a few years back,
Yeah.
a woman was murdered that met someone through Craigslist.
Right, and so it's just an exchange board. They're not really vetting anybody.
Right.
So that's the important thing, is that there's no understanding, that there's no investigation
Yeah.
of these companies
You
as far
list
as,
an item for sale, you don't know who's going to show up at your house,
right.
and
Right.
you could be sorry.
And you really would rather meet them, in a neutral location rather
Yep.
than giving them, your location.
Right.
But even if you're hiring someone to come to your house to paint or clean your gutters,
Yes.
there's different websites that will connect you with people. But you do have to be cautious and do your own research about who it actually is you're
Well, a
dealing
good
with.
website would more than likely research these people, and they know that they're recommending them, that they're good.
Well, I think that's my point, is that they're not necessarily recommending them.
Right.
These are exchange boards, and everybody's free to post.
Is that true at all the
And-
websites?
Some of them do some research and some of them don't. So, and most of them, what you really want to be careful of is the big punishment if you don't do what you said you were going to do. So say I was on one of these websites and I hired a clown to come to entertain at a children's party, and the person didn't show up. The punishment is they'll kick you off their website. But I've already paid you
Yeah.
$100 to come
Yeah.
to this party, you didn't show up, there's no recourse for me. And where I don't know exactly who you are, there's the information of how to contact you by the internet. If you don't know somebody's physical address, if you don't know their a physical phone number compared to a cell phone number, you don't know where they are.
Right.
They may not even be in this state.
Yeah,
And so,
yeah, you're right. Yeah.
the internet makes all those things possible, so
Yes.
you do want to
You could be anywhere in the world.
Yes, and I've learned through this job there is such a thing as a virtual office too. So somebody
Yes.
may actually have, an address that they put on the internet, but they're not there. Their
Right.
mail gets delivered there, and then it gets forwarded to them wherever they actually are.
I know, the internet opens up a whole different world.
Right.
But now, could the internet also could be a good way of checking people out too, right? If
Yes.
you're going to hire a particular company, you could go to the internet and see if anybody's got any complaints about them.
Right. You can just Google on their name and Google on their name and complaints. You can also go, like say you were hiring a home improvement contractor. You can go to the Office of Consumer Affairs and Business Regulation, and you can check their home improvement contractor registration. And you can check their license numbers and see if there's any complaints filed against them there. You can check with the Better Business Bureau and
These
see
would be
what they
safer
have.
places to go.
Right,
If you just Google them, that can be inaccurate too.
right.
Oh, we got to wrap it up.
Oh,
See?
Time flies when you're having fun.
Isn't how fast it goes? Well, I was glad to have you come in, Ann. This has been very interesting and very enjoyable.
Well, thanks so much for having
Yes,
me.
we'll have to have you back again.
All right, great.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, we went off the air, but